My name is Brooke Ashford, and I was 32 years old when my mother-in-law tried to use a secret DNA test to prove that my 4-year-old daughter did not belong to her family. It happened on Thanksgiving night. Victoria Ashford waited until the dinner plates had been cleared. Then she crossed the room, lifted a thick cream-colored envelope from the sideboard, and placed it in front of my husband. "Nolan," she said, "I think you finally deserve the truth about Emma. She had taken our daughter's toothbrush without permission. 3 years earlier, she had stolen one of Nolan's razors. She submitted both items to a direct-to-consumer relationship testing company and requested a private paternity screening. Victoria believed the envelope would prove that I had betrayed her son. She expected my marriage to collapse in front of 12 relatives and the family minister. What she did not know was that the company's consent department had contacted me 19 days earlier. She did not know Nolan and I had already completed a separate, properly authorized paternity test using verified cheek swabs. And she did not know that the family matching report connected her to a truth she had spent 34 years excluding from the official Ashford family history. The envelope was supposed to remove me from her family. Instead, it exposed the person who had built that family around a lie. Before I take you back to the beginning, please like this video and subscribe to Calm Deception Stories. Here, quiet preparation matters more than public accusations, and the people who build a stage for someone else's humiliation do not always control what the audience discovers. I first met Victoria 8 years before that Thanksgiving. Nolan and I had been dating for 5 months when he invited me to Sunday dinner at his parents' home in Westport, Connecticut. The house stood behind a stone wall at the end of a private lane, 3 stories of pale brick, black shutters, and windows polished so perfectly that they reflected the bare winter trees. Nolan warned me that his mother was particular. That was the word he used. Particular. She liked punctuality, handwritten thank you notes, properly folded napkins, and furniture returned to its exact position after someone stood up. She had spent almost 3 decades working in the county probate office, reviewing estates, death certificates, family records, and property transfers. She remembers every date she has ever seen, Nolan told me. Do not be surprised if she asks where your grandparents were born. I thought he was joking. Victoria opened the front door before we knocked. She was 52 then, tall and controlled, with carefully styled chestnut hair and a navy cashmere dress. A small gold locket rested against her collarbone. She did not hug me. She took my hand and held it for 1 second longer than normal. "So," she said, examining my face, "you are Brooke." Behind her stood Nolan's father, Raymond, broad-shouldered and silver-haired, wearing an old flannel shirt that looked almost rebellious inside that immaculate house. "Come in before Victoria starts the background check on the porch," he said. Victoria smiled without looking at him. "I am simply interested in the woman our son has become serious about." The word "our" sounded different in her mouth. It did not include Raymond as much as it declared ownership. Dinner was roast chicken, wild rice, glazed carrots, and a pear tart Victoria said had been in her family for 4 generations. The silver had belonged to Nolan's great-grandmother. The walnut table had been built from trees grown on land, once owned by Raymond's grandfather. The blue china had arrived from England in 1926. Everything had an origin. Everything had a documented line of possession. Victoria did not speak about objects as though they were useful or beautiful. She spoke about them as though their value came from being traceable. Her questions to me began politely. Where had I grown up? What did my mother do? Where had my father moved after my parents divorced? What had I studied? Then the questions narrowed. Your mother's maiden name is Bellamy? Yes. French? Mostly Irish, according to my grandmother. And your father's family? English and Scottish. No Italian ancestry? Not that I know of. No Greek or Spanish? I looked at Nolan. He was concentrating on his chicken. I do not think so, I said. Victoria touched the edge of the gold locket and rubbed it between her thumb and forefinger. Interesting. That became her word whenever she collected a detail she intended to remember. After dinner, Raymond showed me family photographs in the living room. Nolan at 6 with 2 missing teeth. Nolan at 12 holding a fishing rod. Nolan and his younger sister, Paige, wearing matching sweaters in front of the fireplace. Victoria stood behind us and corrected every date Raymond mentioned. That was 2002, not 2001. That lake house belonged to my aunt. Paige was 9 there. Nolan was 12. She maintained the Ashford family history like a private archive, and everyone else had learned not to challenge the official version. On the drive home, Nolan asked what I thought. Your father is funny. And my mother? She knows a lot about people. He laughed. That means she liked you. I did not say she disliked me. Mom can be intense. Records and family history are how her mind works. She asked whether I had Mediterranean ancestry. She probably read an article. She asked twice. Nolan reached across the center console and squeezed my hand. If she had a problem with you, you would know. I looked through the passenger window at the dark road. I already did know. I simply did not understand the size of the problem yet. Nolan and I married the following September at a vineyard outside New Haven. 80 guests, white roses, string lights, and a late summer storm that reached the hills 10 minutes after we finished our vows. Victoria wore pale champagne. My older sister whispered that it was close enough to white to be intentional. I told her it did not matter. Nolan looked at me as though the entire world had finally settled into the correct arrangement. The first year of our marriage was happy, but Victoria was woven through it in ways I initially mistook for closeness. She called Nolan every morning at 7:15. She reminded him about birthdays, insurance renewals, dental appointments, oil changes, family dinners, and anniversaries he had already entered into our calendar. She possessed a key to our townhouse because Nolan had given it to her during a plumbing emergency before we married. I assumed she would use it only if something went wrong. Victoria considered many things emergencies. A coat left over the back of a dining chair. A package unopened on the kitchen counter. A pantry arranged by use instead of expiration date. I returned from work one Wednesday and found every cabinet reorganized. Plates had moved. Spices had been alphabetized. Coffee mugs were grouped by color and height. On the counter, Victoria had left a note. Brooke, this will make your mornings more efficient. You are welcome. When Nolan came home, I handed him the paper. She was trying to help. She entered our house without asking. She has always done that. That does not make it acceptable. He loosened his tie and sighed. I will talk to her. He did not. Or if he did, the conversation changed nothing. His younger sister, Paige, visited most weekends. She was 25, beautiful in the polished way Victoria admired, and had recently moved back home after leaving a marketing job in Boston. Paige and I were friendly at first. She complimented my clothes, asked about my patients, brought wine, and stayed late enough to help wash dishes. But anything I told Paige traveled directly to Victoria. If I mentioned that Nolan and I were considering a vacation, Victoria called the next morning to explain why the timing was financially irresponsible. If I said we might paint the guest room, Victoria appeared with fabric samples. If I told Paige that Nolan had been working too much, Victoria later asked whether our marriage was under unusual strain. Paige did not treat information as something shared between two people. In the Ashford family, every detail flowed toward Victoria. She stood at the center of the system. Everyone reported upward. 2 years into our marriage, I became pregnant. Nolan cried when I showed him the test. He sat on the edge of our bed, holding the plastic stick in both hands as if it were fragile and sacred. Victoria's reaction was different. She hugged Nolan first. Then she placed both hands on my shoulders. Now, she said, you are giving us the next generation. The sentence bothered me. Not, you are having a baby. Not, I am happy for you. You are giving us the next generation. As though I were carrying something that already belonged to her. My pregnancy was mostly easy. Victoria attended the baby shower, ordered a custom cradle without asking, and had a family tree printed for the nursery. It went back 5 generations on the Ashford side. When I asked whether my family could be included, she said there was not enough room in the design. We will order another one, Nolan promised. We never did. Emma was born on a rainy Monday morning in March. 7 pounds, 9 ounces. 10 fingers. 10 twos. A powerful cry and an angry little face. The first time Nolan held her, his entire body changed. His shoulders softened, his breathing slowed. He looked at her with such complete tenderness that I remember thinking no one would ever be able to make him doubt the bond he felt in that moment. Victoria arrived 3 hours later. She stood beside my hospital bed while Nolan placed Emma in her arms. For once, calculation disappeared from her expression. She has Nolan's chin, she whispered. Raymond leaned over her shoulder. And Brooke's mouth. Victoria studied Emma again. Perhaps. At birth, Emma's hair was dark brown. By 6 months, it had become pale gold. By her first birthday, it was almost white in direct sunlight. Her eyes changed too. They began as the cloudy blue most newborns have and settled into a light gray-green with a darker ring around each iris. People commented everywhere we went. At the grocery store. At the pediatrician's office. At the park. Victoria commented more than anyone. The first openly uncomfortable moment happened when Emma was 14 months old. We were at Raymond and Victoria's house for Sunday dinner. Emma sat in a high chair, crushing peas against the tray. Victoria leaned close and studied her face. Those eyes are extraordinary. My grandmother had similar eyes, I said. Victoria looked at Nolan. No one in our family does. She has my chin, Nolan replied, smiling. The chin, perhaps. Her voice was light, almost playful. But Raymond reached for his water. Paige glanced at her phone, and Nolan laughed too quickly. I wiped peas from Emma's fingers. That was the first entry in my notebook. The comments continued for the next 2 years. Not every visit. Not every meal. Only often enough to create a pattern. Her coloring is unusual. She photographs beautifully, even though she does not resemble the other Ashford children. Are you certain your grandmother's eyes were that light? Perhaps the blonde hair comes from Brooke's father. Genetics can be unpredictable. That last sentence always came with a pause. I began recording the remarks because documentation was how I protected myself from doubting my own memory. I worked as a pediatric physical therapist at a rehabilitation hospital in Bridgeport. My patients were children recovering from spinal injuries, surgeries, neurological disorders, and accidents that had changed their bodies before they were old enough to understand why. At work, tiny details mattered. The angle of a knee, the pressure of a hand, the difference between a child refusing to stand because she was afraid and refusing because something hurt. I documented repetitions, resistance, fatigue, muscle tone, emotional triggers, and improvements too small for anyone else to notice. A foot moved half an inch. A hand remained open for 3 seconds. A child shifted weight without crying. Progress often appeared invisible until someone recorded it. So, I recorded Victoria too. January 8. She does not have Nolan's eyes. February 17. Asked whether my father's family had any uncertain branches. March 3. Told Paige that Emma's coloring was statistically unusual. April 11. Compared Emma to photographs of Nolan at the same age. May 26. Said she hoped Nolan never regretted trusting too easily. I kept the notebook inside the locked drawer of my home office. At first, I did not tell Nolan. I still hoped he would notice without my having to teach him how to see his mother. Then came Emma's 3rd birthday. We held the party in our backyard with paper flowers, strawberry cupcakes, an inflatable castle, and 12 children moving in every direction. My mother drove from Providence. My sister brought her 2 sons. Raymond grilled hamburgers. Nolan spent 20 minutes repairing a bubble machine with a screwdriver and electrical tape. Victoria arrived carrying a framed collage. On the left were photographs of Nolan at ages 1, 2, and 3. On the right were photographs of Emma at the same ages. She placed it on the gift table where every adult could see it. Paige leaned over the frame. Wow, she said. They really do not look alike. My mother stood beside me. Her body went completely still. Victoria smiled. I thought it would be interesting to compare, my mother said. Children are not required to resemble one side of a family. Victoria tilted her head. Of course not. No one said they were. You did not need to. Nolan approached with a tray of drinks. What is happening? Nothing, Victoria said. My mother looked at him. We are discussing why your mother brought a visual paternity argument to a 3-year-old's birthday party. The adults around us fell silent, although the children continued shrieking inside the inflatable castle. Nolan's face reddened. Mom? Victoria raised both hands. That is ridiculous. It is a family collage. You chose photographs where he looks least like her, I said. Her eyes moved toward me. I selected the same ages. If the comparison makes you uncomfortable, Brooke, that is not my fault. Raymond stepped forward. Victoria, put it in the car. She stared at him. Raymond. Now. She removed the collage, but the party never recovered. After everyone left, Nolan and I stood in the kitchen among paper plates and half-empty cups. I am sorry, he said. I waited for more. She should not have brought that. That is not the same as saying she should not believe what it suggests. She does not actually think Emma is not mine. Then what was the purpose? She likes patterns, resemblance, history. You know how she is. Yes, I know exactly how she is. I will talk to her. I closed the dishwasher. You keep saying that. I mean it. What will you say? That the comments have to stop. And when she says she never accused me of anything? His silence answered. Nolan was not weak. He managed commercial construction projects worth millions of dollars. He could stand in front of 50 subcontractors and end an argument with 3 sentences. He could tell a client a deadline was impossible and somehow make them grateful for the honesty. But with Victoria, he became the boy who had learned that the safest way through conflict was to reduce friction. She had taught him that boundaries were cruelty. That disagreement was disrespect. That her hurt feelings proved someone else had behaved badly. He loved me. He loved Emma. But love and courage do not always mature at the same speed. 3 months after the birthday party, Paige posted a photograph of Emma online. Emma was sitting in Victoria's garden in a yellow dress, her pale hair glowing in the sunlight. The caption read, "Our little mystery girl. Those eyes came from somewhere." She added a magnifying glass emoji. By the time I saw it, the post had hundreds of likes. Several relatives had commented. One wrote, "Maybe she is secretly Scandinavian." Another wrote, "Genetics are full of surprises." Victoria's older sister, Lorraine, reacted with a single heart but said nothing. I showed the post to Nolan. His jaw tightened. "I will call Paige." "You said that about your mother. This is different." "No, it is the same accusation with a younger face." He called Paige from the kitchen. I heard only his side. "Take it down. I do not care whether it was a joke." "No, Brooke is not being sensitive. Because I am asking you. Paige, take it down." She removed the photograph 20 minutes later. Then Victoria called him. I stood in the hallway while he answered. "Mom, it was inappropriate." A pause. "No, Brooke did not make me call." Another pause. "I know Paige did not intend harm." His tone began to soften. "I understand that you care. No one is keeping Emma from you." When he ended the call, he looked exhausted. "What did she say?" I asked. "That you are trying to divide the family." I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes the most predictable response is still unbelievable when you hear it spoken aloud. The toothbrush disappeared on a Thursday in October. I had an evening patient, a 9-year-old boy recovering from surgery for a spinal tumor. Nolan was attending a site meeting in Stamford. Victoria offered to collect Emma from preschool and keep her until I finished work. My first instinct was to say no. Then I remembered Nolan asking me to make an effort. I packed Emma's pajamas, snacks, stuffed rabbit, and the small purple toothbrush she insisted on using because it had silver stars on the handle. When I collected her at 8, Emma was already in pajamas. Victoria handed me the overnight bag. "She ate well," she said. "Bath at 6:30. 1 story. Thank you." Emma ran to me and wrapped both arms around my legs. On the drive home, she asked for her star toothbrush. I checked the bag at a red light. It was missing. I called Victoria. "I think Emma's toothbrush stayed at your house." "Oh," she said. "That old thing? It is less than a month old." The bristles looked worn. I may have thrown it away. They were not worn. "Well, I will look." The next morning, I drove back before work. Victoria was attending a historical society meeting. Raymond answered the door wearing work gloves. "She is out until lunch," he said. "I only need Emma's toothbrush." He let me inside. I found it in the guest bathroom trash can, wrapped in a paper towel. The handle had been wiped clean. The bristles were still damp. When I lifted it, a narrow plastic wrapper slid from beneath the paper towel and landed near my shoe. The label read, "Sterile DNA Collection Swab." Paige appeared in the doorway holding a coffee cup. "You found the toothbrush." "Your mother said she threw it away because it was worn." Paige shrugged. "Maybe she changed her mind." "Why is there a DNA swab wrapper beneath it?" Her expression shifted for less than a second. Then she looked bored. "Mom joined a genealogy service. She has been testing everyone." "Everyone." "Dad, me, herself." "Nolan." "I do not know." "Emma?" "You would have to ask Mom." I placed the wrapper inside the paper towel and carried everything with me. Raymond followed me to the front step. "Is something wrong?" I looked back at the house. "Did Victoria ask your permission before testing your DNA?" He frowned. "What test?" The missing toothbrush, the wrapper, the years of comments, and Paige's expression stopped being separate details. I drove to work, completed 4 appointments, and did not allow myself to react until I was sitting alone in my car that evening. Then I called Nolan. Did your mother ever ask you to take a DNA test? No. Has she ever collected a sample from you? What are you talking about? Think carefully. No. Why? I looked at the wrapped toothbrush on the passenger seat. Emma's toothbrush was in your mother's trash. There was a DNA swab package beneath it. He was silent. Then he said, "That does not necessarily mean, Nolan. I am not defending her. I am saying we do not know exactly what happened." You are right, we do not. I will call her. No. Brooke. Do not call her yet. Why? Because I want to find out what she did before she has time to create an explanation. He remained quiet for several seconds. All right. His agreement surprised me. What are you going to do? I do not know yet. The answer arrived 2 days later. I was between appointments when my phone rang from an unfamiliar Connecticut number. Mrs. Ashford? A woman asked. Yes. My name is Melissa Grant. I am contacting you from Heritage Kinship Services regarding a minor profile submitted under the name Emma Rose Ashford. My hand tightened around the phone. I did not submit a profile. That is why the account was referred to our consent review department. A relationship screening was requested using a toothbrush attributed to Emma Ashford and a stored sample attributed to Nolan Ashford. The account holder identified herself as the child's legal guardian. Who? Victoria Ashford. I closed the therapy room door. Has the result been released? A preliminary informational report had already entered our mailing system before the consent discrepancy was detected. It cannot be treated as a legally verified paternity report because neither sample was collected through an identity-confirmed chain of custody. Has it been delivered? It was mailed to the account holder yesterday. We have frozen all electronic access. My stomach tightened. What exactly will that report say? It will show the statistical relationship calculated from the submitted samples. However, the company recommends a new test using verified cheek swabs and direct consent from the alleged parent. Place everything else on hold. That has already been done. What is the sample attributed to my husband? The notes indicate that a personal grooming item was submitted approximately 3 years ago. What kind of item? A disposable razor. My skin went cold. Nolan had never knowingly taken a DNA test. Melissa explained that Heritage Kinship offered 2 separate services. The first was an informational relationship screening. The second was an optional genealogy matching database. Victoria had enrolled both samples in the genealogy system. Has any family matching occurred? I asked. Automated matching can begin once a DNA profile is processed. We can suspend the profiles while your identity and guardianship are verified. What do you need? She listed the documents. My identification, Emma's birth certificate, proof of address, a signed guardianship declaration. I wrote everything down. Before we ended the call, I said, preserve all records connected to the account. I can place an internal preservation flag, but a formal legal request should come from an attorney. Thank you. I ended the call and sat at my desk. On the wall in front of me was a poster illustrating the stages of gait recovery. Weight shift, balance, forward movement, recovery. I read each word until the room felt level again. Then I called a lawyer. Mara Singh practiced family and privacy law from a quiet office above a bookstore in New Haven. She had 14 years of experience and a reputation for giving direct answers. I met her the following morning. I told her about the comments, the birthday collage, the online post, the toothbrush, the swab wrapper, and the call from Heritage Kinship. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands. There are several issues, she said. First, your mother-in-law did not have the authority to consent to genetic testing for your minor child. So what she did was illegal? It may violate the company's consent rules and state privacy protections concerning a minor's genetic information. I would not make a final legal conclusion until we review the forms and determine exactly how the samples were obtained. She used my name. If she impersonated you or falsified a guardian certification, that creates additional concerns. And Nolan's razor? He must decide whether he wants to pursue that separately. The immediate priority is preserving the records and preventing further access to Emma's data. Should I tell him now? Would he call his mother? I looked at the floor. Probably. Would she apologize, minimize the conduct, and ask him to keep it inside the family? Yes. And would he be tempted to accept that? Yes. Mara leaned back. Then secure the evidence first. You do not need to wait indefinitely, but you need enough time to prevent the account from disappearing. He is my husband. Yes. I would be withholding something from him. You would be delaying disclosure for a limited period while protecting records from a person he has historically failed to confront. That is not the same as deceiving him for personal gain. It may feel like deception to him. It may. She did not offer comfort where honesty was more useful. That is one of the difficult choices in front of you. Tell him immediately and risk Victoria erasing the records, or preserve the evidence and explain why you waited. How long? Days, not weeks. I paid the consultation fee and left with a written plan. That afternoon, I submitted my identification, Emma's birth certificate, and the guardianship documents. Mara sent Heritage Kinship a formal preservation request covering the account records, electronic signatures, login history, communications, sample notes, mailing records, and genealogy data. For the next 3 days, I continued working, cooking dinner, bathing Emma, and sleeping beside Nolan, while knowing his mother had secretly submitted his DNA. The hardest part was not keeping the information from him. It was watching him move through ordinary life without realizing that Victoria had crossed a boundary neither of us had imagined needing to name. One night, Emma climbed into our bed at 2 a.m. She curled against Nolan's chest, her pale hair spread across his shoulder, his hand rested protectively over her back. I watched them in the dim light and thought about the difference between biological evidence and lived truth. Whatever appeared in a report, Nolan had been Emma's father since the moment he heard her cry. On the 4th morning, Melissa called. My guardianship had been verified. The minor profile had been transferred into my control. The company had preserved all data. However, the stored sample attributed to Nolan could not be used for a formal paternity conclusion without his direct authorization and a new identity-confirmed sample. The preliminary report mailed to Victoria is informational only, Melissa explained. If you and your husband want a verified result, we recommend new cheek swabs collected under documented consent. How long would an expedited test take? Approximately 5 business days after the samples arrive. That was the point when withholding the matter from Nolan stopped being necessary. That evening, after Emma went to bed, I placed the toothbrush, the wrapper, Melissa's written notice, and Mara's preservation letter on the kitchen table. Nolan read the first page. His face changed. She did it. Yes. How long have you known? 4 days. He looked at me. You waited 4 days to tell me? I needed the account preserved before your mother knew the company had contacted me. You thought I would warn her? I thought you might call her before deciding what you wanted to do. He stood and walked toward the sink. I promised I would not. You promised after we found the toothbrush. Before that you had spent years telling me you would speak to her and then accepting whatever explanation she gave you. He turned. That is not fair. It is not kind, but it is fair. Pain crossed his face. I did not take the words back. He read the preservation letter again. What happens now? The report your mother receives will be a preliminary comparison based on stolen items. It is not a verified paternity test. You and Emma can complete new cheek swabs with proper consent. Do you need me to prove she is mine? No. Then why do it? Because your mother is preparing something, and I want evidence she cannot dismiss as contaminated, mishandled, or manipulated. He stared at the toothbrush. She stole Emma's DNA. Yes. And mine. Yes. His hand tightened around the edge of the table. I want the verified test. The following morning, Nolan and I visited a collection center affiliated with Heritage Kinship. A technician checked our identification, photographed the sealed kits, and collected cheek swabs from Nolan and Emma. Emma giggled when the swab touched the inside of her mouth. It tickles. Nolan smiled at her, but his eyes were wet. When the technician left the room, he said, I am sorry. For what? For letting this reach the point where we are sitting in a clinic proving something that should never have been questioned. You did not take the toothbrush. No, but I trained you to tolerate the comments because confronting her made me uncomfortable. I held his hand. That is something we will have to deal with after the result. He nodded. Not everything needed to be forgiven at the same speed. The next question was whether Victoria planned a public confrontation. I got the answer 6 days later. I went to the Ashford house to return a casserole dish Raymond had left at our townhouse. I knew Victoria was at a luncheon and intended to leave it with Raymond. Paige answered the door. She wore wireless earbuds and was speaking to someone. I will call you back, she said when she saw me. I held up the dish. Your father's. He is in the garage. I crossed the kitchen. On the counter were place cards for Thanksgiving. Aunt Lorraine. Uncle David. Reverend Collins. A handwritten seating chart lay beside them. Nolan's name was beside Victoria's. Mine was directly across. Raymond sat at the head. The plan was not subtle. Paige entered behind me and turned the seating chart face down. Mom is planning early. Why is Reverend Collins coming? Dad invited him. Your father does not like him. Paige crossed her arms. Maybe he has changed his mind. I set the dish on the counter. Is Victoria planning to discuss Emma's DNA at Thanksgiving? Paige's eyes widened. What? Answer the question. I do not know what you are talking about. Then say no. She looked toward the hallway. Brooke, if you have nothing to hide, why are you so afraid? The sentence sounded rehearsed. I am not afraid. You should talk to Mom. I am talking to you. Paige lowered her voice. She is trying to protect Nolan. From what? You know. No, say it. Emma does not look like him. She has his chin, his ears, his smile, and half of his DNA. Paige blinked. I had said more than I intended. What? I watched her carefully. Did your mother tell you she already had a result? Paige's mouth tightened. She said the company mailed proof. Has she opened it? No. She wants Nolan to open it. Why? Because she says that way no one can accuse her of changing anything. Does she know what it says? She believes she does. That answer mattered. Victoria was staging a public accusation without reading the report. Her certainty came from suspicion, not evidence. When is she presenting it? Paige folded the seating chart. You need to leave. Thanksgiving? She looked away. That was enough. I found Raymond in the garage, gave him the dish, and drove home. I immediately wrote down the conversation with the date, time, and exact phrases I remembered. Then I called Mara. She has invited a minister. That tells you what kind of pressure she intends to create. Paige says the envelope is still sealed. Then Victoria does not know the result. She thinks she does. Belief is not evidence. Should we stop the dinner? That is no longer only your decision. Nolan has a right to choose how he wants to address his mother. That night, Nolan and I sat at the kitchen table after Emma fell asleep. I told him about the seating chart. He closed his eyes. She wants an audience. Yes. Why invite Reverend Collins? To make the accusation feel moral instead of cruel. He leaned back. I should call her now. You can. He studied my face. You think I should not? I think you need to decide what outcome you want. If you call her, she may cancel the performance. That may protect us from a public accusation. It may also allow her to tell every relative a private version in which she was only concerned and we overreacted. So you want to let her do it? I want you to decide whether you need to see her choose it. His jaw tightened. I already know she chose it. Knowing an action happened is not always the same as seeing the entire pattern clearly. He looked down at his hands. I have spent my life translating her behavior into something easier to forgive. Yes. He accepted the word without defending himself. The authorized paternity report arrived the following afternoon. Probability of paternity: 99.9998%. Nolan read the result twice. She is mine. She always was. He pressed both palms against his eyes. I hate that seeing the number gives me relief. Relief does not mean you doubted her. It means the accusation has been following us for years. We downloaded the report and printed 2 copies. Then Melissa called. There is an additional matter concerning the genealogy profiles, she said. Because Mr. Ashford has now provided verified consent, we can release his close family matches directly to him. Nolan placed the call on speaker. Melissa explained that the fresh cheek swab confirmed the identity of the older DNA profile created from the razor. The 2 profiles belonged to the same person. A close relative had appeared in the genealogy database. Who? Nolan asked. A man named Charles Edwin Weller. The shared DNA falls within a parent-child range. The kitchen became completely still. Nolan stared at the phone. Are you saying he is my father? I am saying the genetic relationship is consistent with a biological parent and child. The platform cannot determine the personal circumstances. What about my father, Raymond Ashford? His profile is not in the database, so we cannot compare him. But the amount of DNA shared with Mr. Weller is not consistent with a distant relationship. Nolan ended the call after Melissa explained how to access the report. He did not move. I opened the family match page. Charles Weller was 66 and lived in Savannah, Georgia. His profile photograph showed a man beside a sailboat, sunburned and smiling. Silver hair, a slightly crooked nose, gray-green eyes with dark rings around the irises. Emma's eyes. Nolan's eyes. The relationship report listed Charles as Nolan's probable biological father and Emma's probable biological grandfather. Paige appeared as Nolan's maternal half-sibling. Raymond was not Nolan's biological father. Nolan stood so quickly that the chair struck the wall. No. I stayed seated. My father is Raymond. He is your father. That is not what the report says. It says he is not your biological father. It does not erase the man who raised you. Nolan walked into the living room. On the wall hung the Ashford family tree Victoria had printed when Emma was born. His name branched neatly from Raymond and Victoria. Emma's name appeared below his. A perfect line. An official history. He looked at it for a long time. Did she know? We do not know. She submitted my DNA 3 years ago. Charles may not have been in the database then. She knew he existed. That is likely. He turned toward me. How long have you known about the match? Less than 10 minutes. His expression broke. For once, I had not arrived at the truth ahead of him. We were standing inside it together. He sank onto the couch. I sat beside him without touching him. He asked questions neither of us could answer. Who was Charles? Had Raymond known? Did Charles know Nolan existed? Why had Victoria married Raymond? Did Lorraine know? Was Paige aware? Had Victoria recognized Emma's eyes? I answered only what the report supported. When Nolan finally reached for my hand, I gave it to him. The preserved account records arrived 2 days later. Victoria had opened the genealogy dashboard after submitting Nolan's razor 3 years earlier. At that time, Charles was not in the database. He joined 16 months before Thanksgiving. The records showed that Victoria received an automated notification about a possible close relative shortly before she submitted Emma's toothbrush. She never opened the relative's profile. She logged in only to create Emma's account and request the paternity screening. The consent discrepancy froze the account before she could review the genealogy match. That explained her behavior. Victoria did not know the DNA system had identified Charles. She knew only that there had been another man before her wedding and that Nolan might not be Raymond's biological child. For 34 years, she had refused to confirm it. The preliminary paternity report had been mailed automatically before the account freeze. It remained sealed because Victoria wanted Nolan to open it in front of the family. Her confidence did not come from reading the result. It came from obsession. She had convinced herself that Emma's pale hair and unusual eyes proved I had done what she had spent her adult life fearing she had done to Raymond. Mara reviewed the guardian form. Victoria had checked a box declaring that she was Emma's legal guardian. She typed my full name beneath the certification and drew an electronic imitation of my signature. The submission came from her home internet connection. The evidence was clear enough to support a formal complaint, though Mara warned us that legal outcomes were never automatic. We can send a cease and desist letter now, she said. Or preserve the issue until after Thanksgiving. Nolan answered before I could. After. Mara looked at him. Why? Because she has spent years making Brooke feel that every accusation existed only in Brooke's imagination. If we stop the dinner privately, my mother will tell the family she was misunderstood. And if the dinner happens, she will have to own the decision in front of the people she invited. Mara turned to me. Is that what you want? I thought carefully. I do not want revenge. That was not my question. I want the accusations to stop. I want Emma protected. And I want Nolan to understand that setting a boundary after the next incident is not enough. The entire pattern has to end. Mara nodded. Then understand the cost. The information about Charles will not affect only Victoria. I understand. Raymond was the person who kept me awake. He had raised Nolan for 34 years. He coached his baseball team, paid for college, helped him buy his first truck, and held Emma the day she was born. He was not simply part of Victoria's secret. He was one of the people it had been built around. I asked Mara whether warning him would be kinder. You are not organizing the confrontation, she said. You are not presenting the accusation. But you are responsible for how you participate. I do not want to humiliate him. Then do not use his pain as a weapon. Present only what is necessary. Let Nolan control the information about his own parentage. That became our agreement. Nolan would carry the family match report. He would decide when to reveal it. He would ask the questions. I would address the violations against Emma and me. For the first time, we were not allowing Victoria to determine our roles. The night before Thanksgiving, Nolan and I had the conversation we had avoided for years. We sat on the floor beside Emma's bed after she fell asleep. Her stuffed rabbit was tucked beneath her chin. Nolan whispered, "You were alone in this marriage more often than I admitted." I looked at him. "I was not alone all the time. That is not the same as saying I protected you." "No. Every time Mom made a comment, I asked you to interpret it generously, because that was easier than confronting her." "Yes. I told myself I was keeping peace. You were preserving access to her approval." He absorbed the sentence. "You are right." I watched Emma breathe. "I need you to understand something. Even if tomorrow goes perfectly, the DNA result does not repair what happened before it. Your mother's accusation was not the only injury. You repeatedly taught me that my discomfort mattered less than her reaction." His face tightened. "What do you need from me?" "I need change, not another promise that you will talk to her." He nodded. "What does change look like?" "It means boundaries are decisions we enforce before she gets another opportunity to hurt us. It means you do not feed her private information. It means you do not ask me to tolerate disrespect because her reaction will be difficult." "I can do that. We will find out." It was not a romantic answer. It was an honest one. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and cold. Emma woke early and climbed into our bed. She studied Nolan's face. "Daddy, your eyes look tired." "I am tired. Grandma says turkey makes people sleepy." "Grandma says many things." I looked at him. There was no humor in his voice. We dressed carefully. Not for battle. For ourselves. I wore a dark green sweater and black pants. Nolan wore the blue shirt Emma loved because she said it matched his eyes. Emma wore a cream dress embroidered with tiny leaves. Before we left, Nolan placed the authorized paternity report, the guardian form, the account records, and the family match report inside a blue binder. He carried it himself. "This belongs to me," he said. We arrived at Victoria and Raymond's house at 4:15. Cars lined the driveway. Paige's white SUV. Lorraine's sedan. Uncle David's truck. Reverend Collins's black Buick. Victoria had invited the people whose judgment mattered most to her. She opened the door, wearing burgundy silk and the gold locket. Her eyes moved first to Nolan. Then, to the binder beneath his arm. "What is that?" "Work papers." It was the first lie I had ever heard him tell his mother without flinching. She looked at me. "Brooke." "Victoria." She bent toward Emma. "There is my beautiful girl." Emma hugged her. For one painful second, Victoria looked like any loving grandmother. Warm, safe, familiar. That was what made people like her difficult to explain. They were rarely cruel every minute. They surrounded the damage with enough tenderness that everyone questioned whether the damage counted. Raymond entered from the dining room and lifted Emma into his arms. "Pumpkin." She touched his shirt. "Papa, that bird looks tired." "It is a duck. It looks like a chicken who missed a nap." Raymond laughed. Nolan watched them. His expression tightened, but he said nothing. The dining room had been arranged with precision. Raymond sat at the head. Victoria, at the opposite end. Nolan beside her. I sat across from him. Paige was near Victoria. Lorraine sat beside Raymond. Reverend Collins had been placed between Uncle David and Paige. The cream-colored envelope waited on the sideboard. I noticed it immediately. So did Nolan. His knee touched mine beneath the table. Dinner lasted 70 minutes. The turkey was moist. The potatoes were perfect. Raymond told a story about Emma trying to feed leaves to a duck. Reverend Collins offered a prayer about gratitude and family unity. Paige drank 2 glasses of wine too quickly. Lorraine ate almost nothing. Her eyes moved repeatedly toward the sideboard. She knew something. Perhaps not the test. Perhaps only the older secret. Victoria performed normality with disciplined precision. She asked about my work at the hospital. "How are your patients?" "Making progress." "That must be rewarding." "It is." She smiled. "I have always admired people who work with children." Nolan's hand tightened around his water glass. After dessert was served, Victoria stood. She smoothed the front of her dress. Then, she touched the locket. Once. Twice. Conversation ended. "I know this is unusual," she said, "but there is something our family needs to address." Raymond frowned. "What are you doing?" Victoria crossed to the sideboard and lifted the envelope. Paige stared at her plate. Lorraine closed her eyes. Reverend Collins shifted in his chair. Victoria returned to the table and placed the envelope in front of Nolan. "I have struggled for months with whether to show you this." Nolan looked at it. What is it? Her voice softened. The truth about Emma. Raymond pushed back from the table. What truth? Victoria placed both hands on the chair in front of her. I love that child. Everyone here knows I do. But love does not require blindness. My heartbeat remained strong and steady. Nolan did not move. Emma's appearance has raised questions for years, Victoria continued. Questions no one wanted to discuss because Brooke treated every observation as an attack. Uncle David looked at me and then away. Reverend Collins said, Victoria, perhaps this should be a private conversation. No, she replied. Secrecy is what allows a family to decay. Nolan's face changed, a small shift, but I saw it. Victoria had chosen the sentence that would eventually condemn her. She slid the envelope closer. I arranged a paternity test. Raymond stood halfway from his chair. You did what? Victoria did not look at him. I did what Nolan was too trusting to do, Paige whispered. Mom. Do not interrupt. Victoria looked directly at me. If Brooke has told the truth, the result will clear her. She should welcome that. I folded my hands in my lap. Nolan stared at the envelope. Where did you get Emma's DNA? That is not the important issue. It is my first question. I used her toothbrush. And mine? Victoria's eyes flickered. A razor. From my house? I had access. You stole it. I collected what was necessary. Raymond's chair scraped against the floor. Victoria, stop. She lifted her chin. I am protecting our son. No, Nolan said quietly. You are performing. The word struck her. Her fingers moved toward the locket. I am trying to save your marriage before you waste more years inside a lie. Nolan picked up the envelope. Fear entered Victoria's face. Not because she thought the result would be wrong, because something in his expression told her the moment no longer belonged to her. He broke the seal. He removed the preliminary report. He read the first page in silence. 10 seconds. 20. Page stopped moving. Lorraine twisted her napkin. Victoria smiled too soon. Well? Nolan continued reading. Nolan? He looked up. Your report says Emma is my daughter. The air changed. Victoria blinked. What? He read the result. Preliminary probability of a parent-child relationship. 99.97%. He held up the page. The stolen samples you submitted contradict the accusation you brought everyone here to witness. Raymond sat down heavily. Uncle David exhaled. Reverend Collins looked at Victoria with open disbelief. Paige said, maybe it is incomplete. Nolan turned toward her. Why would you want it to be wrong? She opened her mouth and then closed it. Victoria extended her hand. Let me see. Nolan pulled the pages away. No. There may be an error. You were willing to destroy my marriage with this report until it disagreed with you. The samples could have been contaminated. That is why Brooke and I completed a verified test. He opened the blue binder and removed the authorized report. Our identities were checked. New cheek swabs were collected under documented consent. Probability of paternity. 99.9998%. He placed the page beside Victoria's report. Emma is my daughter. Victoria stared at the two documents. The first had been created through theft. The second through consent. Both said the same thing. She looked at me. You knew. The company contacted me 19 days ago because you falsely represented yourself as Emma's legal guardian. Color rose into her cheeks. I am her grandmother. You checked a box saying you were legally authorized to act as her parent. I may have misunderstood the form. You typed my name beneath the certification. I completed it on your behalf. You imitated my signature, Lorraine whispered. Trish. Victoria ignored her. It was an electronic form. I did not forge a document. The account was created from your home. The submission records were preserved. My attorney has copies. Raymond's voice dropped. You signed Brooke's name? Victoria turned toward him. I was trying to protect Nolan. Answer the question. She pressed her lips together. Her hand rose toward the locket but stopped halfway. Nolan placed the report on the table. You also took my razor. It was disposable. It contained my DNA. You are my son. That does not make my body yours. The sentence stunned her. For years, Victoria had treated access as proof of love. A key meant she could enter. A relationship meant she could investigate. Family meant permission was unnecessary. Nolan rested his hand on the binder. You did not clear Brooke. We cleared ourselves after you violated our daughter. Victoria stared at him. You involved a lawyer? I involved my wife. He looked at me. And I should have done that years ago. The acknowledgement reached farther than the dining room. It reached every car ride after a cruel remark. Every holiday, when I swallowed my response. Every promise that he would speak to Victoria later. I felt the weight of those years, but I did not treat one sentence as complete repair. Change would be measured afterward. Raymond leaned forward. Is that everything? Nolan looked at the family match report. No. Victoria's fingers closed around the back of her chair. Lorraine whispered. Nolan, perhaps you should stop. He turned toward her. Why? She looked at Victoria. That glance told him she knew more than she had admitted. Nolan opened the binder to the final section. The company also matched my verified DNA against its genealogy database. Victoria's face lost color. She had not seen the match. But she knew what could be found. Nolan read the name slowly. Charles Edwin Weller, age 66, Savannah, Georgia. Estimated relationship to Emma Ashford, biological grandfather. Raymond did not move. Paige stared at Nolan. Lorraine's fork slipped from her fingers and struck the china. The sound was small, but everyone understood it. Nolan looked at his aunt. You know that name. Lorraine's eyes filled. Victoria said, No one knows what these databases mean. Nolan continued. Charles shares a parent-child amount of DNA with me. Raymond's face emptied. What did you say? Nolan's voice broke. The report identifies Charles Weller as my biological father. Paige covered her mouth. Uncle David whispered. My God. Reverend Collins moved his chair away from the table. Raymond stared at Nolan. Then he looked at Victoria. Tell me it is wrong. She looked at him. 34 years of marriage stood between them. A home. 2 children. Funerals. Anniversaries. Illnesses. Retirement plans. Thousands of ordinary mornings. Victoria, he said again, tell me. Her fingers found the locket. She squeezed it until the chain tightened against her neck. It happened before the wedding. Raymond sat down. Nolan remained standing. What happened? Victoria looked around the room. The audience she had assembled to witness my humiliation was now waiting for her answer. I was confused. About what? Nolan asked. Your father and I had been arguing. We were separated. Raymond's head lifted. For 3 weeks. You said you were not sure you wanted marriage. So, you slept with someone else? Victoria's voice rose. We were not married. That is not the question, Nolan said. Did you know Charles could be my biological father? She looked at him. I was not certain. Did you suspect? Silence. Mom. Yes. The word barely reached the end of the table. Raymond closed his eyes. Nolan asked. Did Charles know you were pregnant? Victoria's grip tightened around the locket. Yes. What did you tell him? That the baby was Raymond's? Nolan inhaled sharply. Raymond stared at her. You told another man the child was mine, and you told me the child was mine, without knowing. My parents said it was the only responsible choice. You were 26. I was terrified. You were 26 for 1 year, Raymond said. You were not 26 for the next 33. Lorraine began crying. Raymond turned toward her. How long did you know? Since the summer before the wedding. And you said nothing? She was my sister. I was her husband. Lorraine pressed a napkin to her mouth. Our parents told us the truth would destroy everyone. Raymond's expression hardened. No, the truth would have forced us to make informed choices. The lie allowed Victoria to make them for us. Nolan looked at his mother. Is that why Emma's eyes bothered you? Victoria did not answer. He held up Charles's profile photograph. Gray-green eyes. Dark rings around the irises. The same downward tilt at the corners. The feature you used to question my daughter came from the man you refused to name. Victoria stared at the photograph. Nolan continued. Emma did not look less like my family. She looked like the part of my family you erased. Paige began crying. Mom told me Brooke had cheated. Victoria turned toward her. I said I had concerns. You said the test would prove it. I believed it would. Why? The question came from me. Victoria looked across the table. Why were you so determined to believe I had deceived Nolan? Her mouth tightened. You recognized those eyes. You knew there was another possible explanation. But instead of facing your own history, you treated my daughter as evidence against me. I was trying to protect my son. No, you were trying to prove that someone else had built a family on the same kind of uncertainty you carried. Her face changed. The words reached the place she had been defending. For one moment, I saw the frightened 26-year-old she had once been. A woman caught between family pressure an unstable relationship, and a pregnancy. I could understand the fear. Understanding did not erase 34 years of choices. Victoria wiped her eyes. This is Brooke's fault. Any sympathy I felt disappeared. She found the report and waited. She wanted this to happen in front of everyone. Nolan stepped between us. No. She could have come to me privately. You could have spoken to us privately before stealing Emma's toothbrush. She wanted to humiliate me. You placed the envelope on the table. Victoria shook her head. She manipulated you. Nolan lifted the cream-colored envelope. You brought the accusation. His hand shook, but his voice remained clear. You invited the witnesses. He placed the envelope in front of her. And you said secrecy destroys families. Victoria looked at it as though it belonged to someone else. Raymond stood and reached for his jacket. Where are you going? She asked. I do not know. Do not make a decision tonight. He looked at her. You made the decision every day for 34 years. Raymond, I loved you. I believe you loved parts of our life. That is not the same as trusting me with the truth. He walked toward the door. Nolan followed. Dad. Raymond stopped. For several seconds, they simply looked at each other. Then Raymond pulled Nolan into his arms. Nolan broke. The sound that came from him was not anger. It was grief without language. Raymond held the back of his head. You are my son. Nolan gripped his coat. Yes. You hear me? I do. Nothing changes that. The DNA report could identify a biological connection. It could not measure 34 years of showing up. But it had changed the meaning of what Raymond had been denied. He released Nolan and walked into the cold. Uncle David followed. Reverend Collins offered to drive behind them. Lorraine remained at the table, crying. Paige stood beside Victoria, no longer knowing which direction loyalty required her to face. I went upstairs to get Emma. She was asleep in the guest room beneath a white quilt, her stuffed rabbit under one arm. I lifted her carefully. Her pale hair fell across my shoulder. She had slept through the collapse of a family history arranged before she was born. When I carried her downstairs, Victoria stood in the foyer. Her face looked older. Not because she had been crying. Because certainty no longer protected her. Please do not take her from me, she said. We are taking her home. I mean permanently. That depends on what you do next. Victoria looked at Nolan. He picked up the blue binder. Do not call us. For how long? Until I am ready. Nolan, I am your mother. And Brooke is my wife. Emma is my daughter. You treated them as threats to a secret you created. I did not intend. Intent does not restore consent. Paige stepped forward. I am sorry, Brooke. I adjusted Emma against my shoulder. For what? Paige looked down. For believing Mom. For repeating what she said. For posting about Emma. For helping her prepare tonight. I appreciated that she named the actions. I did not tell her they were forgiven. An apology is a beginning, I said. It is not the end of the consequence. We left. Emma woke before we reached the highway. Where is Papa? He went for a drive, Nolan answered. Where is Grandma? At home. Was Thanksgiving good? Nolan made a sound that was almost a laugh. It was important. Emma considered that. Can we have cereal when we get home? Yes, I said. Children are merciful that way. The adult world can collapse, and they still remember breakfast. We drove in silence for several miles. Then Nolan said, I am angry that you waited 4 days before telling me. You have the right to be, and I understand why you did it. I am sorry I withheld it. He nodded. I am sorry I created a marriage in which evidence felt safer with an attorney than with me. The sentence hurt because it was accurate. I do not want us to use this crisis to skip the work between us, I said. We will not. Your mother's secret does not erase the years you failed to protect me. You are right. Then tell me what changes. He kept his eyes on the road. She no longer has a key. She is removed from Emma's pickup list. She does not enter our house without an invitation. She does not receive private information about you or Emma through me. If she insults you, the visit ends. If Paige posts Emma again without permission, she loses access too. I listened. And when she cries? I let her cry. When she says I am dividing the family, I tell her her behavior created the distance. When she asks you to keep something from me, I end the conversation. Those were decisions, not promises to talk later. I placed my hand on the center console. He took it. We did not solve our marriage on that drive. But we finally named what repair would require. The next morning, Raymond called from Uncle David's house. His voice sounded rough. I am sorry, he said. You did not arrange the test. I watched Victoria question you for years. I remained quiet. I told myself she was particular. That family history mattered to her. That she would eventually stop. She did not. No. A long pause followed. I should have stopped it. Yes. He accepted the answer without asking me to comfort him. That was accountability. Paige sent me a message the following Monday. I am sorry. I did not respond. 2 days later, she wrote again. I repeated accusations I had no evidence for because Mom made agreement feel like loyalty. I used Emma's photograph for attention and treated your pain like entertainment. I understand if you do not answer, but I need to say clearly that what I did was wrong. I replied. Thank you for naming it honestly. We need time. Mara sent Victoria a formal cease and desist notice, demanding that she stop collecting, submitting, accessing, or distributing genetic information belonging to Emma or Nolan. Her Heritage Kinship account was permanently restricted. The company confirmed that Emma's profile had been transferred to us and that no additional family member could access it without our consent. We chose not to file a civil lawsuit immediately. Not because the violation was minor. Because Nolan and I wanted to decide whether litigation would protect Emma or keep Victoria attached to our lives through another form of conflict. We changed the locks. We changed the alarm code. We removed Victoria and Paige from Emma's preschool pickup list. We informed the school that no relative could collect Emma without direct confirmation from one of us. Those actions felt severe until I remembered how long we had treated Victoria's unrestricted access as normal. Raymond remained at Uncle David's house for 5 months. He met with an attorney and began individual therapy. He told Nolan that he could survive a frightened decision Victoria made at 26. What he did not know how to survive was the fact that she had repeated the decision through silence every day afterward. Forgiveness, he said, might eventually become possible. Trust would require evidence. Nolan contacted Charles Weller 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. He wrote the email himself. My name is Nolan Ashford. A verified DNA test indicates that you may be my biological father. My mother is Victoria Hale Ashford. She worked at the Fairfield County Courthouse in the 1980s. I understand this may be unexpected. I am not asking for anything except an honest conversation if you are willing. Charles answered the next morning. I knew your mother. I did not know about you. I have wondered for 34 years whether she told me the truth. Nolan read the sentence repeatedly. Their first video call lasted 45 minutes. I stayed upstairs with Emma because the conversation belonged to Nolan. Later, he told me Charles had kept 2 letters from Victoria. In the first, she said she was marrying Raymond. In the second, she wrote that the baby she was expecting could not possibly be Charles's. He believed her. He moved to Georgia, married several years later, had 2 daughters, and built another life. He joined the genealogy service after his wife died, partly because one of his daughters had become interested in family history. Charles did not demand a relationship. He said, "The man who raised you is your father. I am a biological truth you were denied. We can decide slowly what that means." That restraint mattered. Victoria came to our house in December. She tried the side door first. The new lock stopped her. Then she knocked at the front. Nolan and I opened it together. She looked thinner. Gray roots showed beneath the chestnut color in her hair. The gold locket was missing. I need to explain, she said. Nolan did not invite her inside. You can explain from there. She looked past us toward the hallway. Is Emma home? No, I said. She was with my mother. Victoria wrapped her cardigan around herself. My parents believed Raymond was the safer future. Charles was leaving Connecticut. I was pregnant and terrified. Nolan's expression remained still. Did you know whose child I was? I suspected. Did you ever plan to tell Dad? I told myself biology did not matter. Then why did it matter so much with Emma? Victoria's eyes filled. I do not know. You do, Nolan said. She looked at him. He continued. You saw Emma's eyes. Every time you looked at her, you remembered the possibility you had buried. Victoria began crying. I thought if the test showed she was not yours, then... She stopped. Then what? I asked. She looked at me. Then I would not be the only person who had built a family around uncertainty. The honesty stunned me. Not because it excused her. Because it revealed the shape of the harm. She had wanted company inside her guilt. If I had deceived Nolan, her own choices might feel less singular, less unforgivable, more ordinary. but she had tried to create that comfort by violating my daughter. I believe you were afraid, I said. Hope moved across her face. Fear does not give you ownership over another person's body or marriage. The hope disappeared. I love Emma. Then respect what protects her. Nolan stepped closer to the door. You need professional help. I understand. You need to give Dad a complete account. No softened version. I will. You need to send Brooke a written apology that does not accuse her of causing the exposure. Victoria nodded. You need to correct what you told Paige, Lorraine, David, and every relative who heard your suspicions. Her face tightened. That will be humiliating. Nolan looked at her. That is not the same as being falsely accused. She lowered her eyes. I said. You will not see Emma until you have been in therapy consistently, corrected the accusations, and demonstrated that you understand why the DNA collection was harmful. She will forget me. No, we are not erasing you. We are limiting your access until the relationship is safe. Will I ever be alone with her again? I cannot promise that. Victoria wiped her cheeks. I love her. Then accept the uncertainty you created. For once, she did not argue. Before leaving, she touched the place where the locket had rested. It belonged to Charles, she said. He gave it to me the summer we met. Nolan's face changed. Why did you keep wearing it? I stopped after I married Raymond. I took it out again when you were born. She said she did not know why, but I thought she did. It had been a private monument to the life she buried, resting in plain sight while she questioned everyone else's origins. Victoria began therapy. 2 months later, she sent me a handwritten letter. It did not begin with "I was only trying to help." It did not blame my response, Nolan's distance, or the testing company. She wrote, I treated my fear as evidence and my access as permission. I used Emma's body to investigate a suspicion about you. I encouraged Paige and other relatives to see you as dishonest. I understand that love does not excuse surveillance, and being a grandmother did not give me the right to collect genetic information. It was the first apology from her that did not request immediate comfort. I kept the letter. I did not treat it as proof of change, only as the first piece. Victoria also sent a correction to the relatives who had heard her accusations. She stated that the authorized test confirmed Nolan's paternity, that she had collected samples without permission, and that her suspicions had been false. Paige deleted the old photographs of Emma and posted a public apology without revealing private family details. She admitted that she had turned a child's appearance into a joke and repeated claims she had never verified. When she began visiting again, she asked before taking photographs. She asked before posting. She learned that permission did not make a family colder. It made relationships safer. Nolan and I began couples counseling. The sessions were not primarily about Victoria's hidden relationship with Charles. They were about the years before the DNA test. The mornings when Victoria entered our house. The comments Nolan dismissed. The birthday collage. The way I had reduced my own reactions so he would not feel trapped between his mother and his wife. Our therapist asked Nolan why he believed neutrality had been possible. He said, because choosing Brooke would have meant disappointing my mother. The therapist asked. And refusing to choose? Nolan looked at me. It meant repeatedly disappointing my wife. That was the wound I needed acknowledged. Not because I wanted him punished. Because a marriage cannot repair what both people refuse to name. At work, I continued treating a 6-year-old boy named Mateo, who had nerve damage in his left leg. Whenever he felt unstable, he threw his weight backward and reached for the nearest adult. For months, I caught him before he could recover his balance. One afternoon, I moved my hands just far enough away that he had to correct himself. His mother became nervous. What if he falls? I am close enough to protect him, I said. But if I hold him before he loses balance, he will never learn what his own body can do. Mateo wobbled. His arms lifted. His left knee bent. Then he corrected himself. 1 second. 2, 3. His face opened in surprise. I did it. You did? Driving home, I thought about Nolan. For years, I had caught him before he experienced the consequences of avoiding Victoria. I softened my anger. Changed holiday plans. Accepted explanations she never earned. I told myself I was supporting my husband. Sometimes I was preventing him from learning balance. That realization did not make me responsible for Victoria's behavior. It helped me understand how I would live differently. I would no longer protect adults from the consequences of choices that harmed me or my child. 5 months after Thanksgiving, Raymond returned to the Westport house on a trial basis. He and Victoria created written conditions with their therapist. Complete disclosure about Charles. No deleted messages. No secret financial accounts. No using Paige as an intermediary. No unannounced access to our home. No contact with Emma outside our rules. Raymond told Nolan. Moving back is not a declaration that the marriage is repaired. It means, I am willing to see whether honesty can become a daily habit. That sounded more credible than a dramatic promise of forgiveness. Nolan flew to Savannah in March. He met Charles at a restaurant near the river. They stayed for 5 hours. Nolan returned with photographs of 2 half-sisters, Rachel and Claire. Charles did not try to replace Raymond. He asked questions and allowed Nolan to choose what to answer. In June, Charles visited Connecticut. Raymond agreed to meet him at our house. I worried about the conversation more than Nolan did. The 2 men sat on our back porch for nearly 3 hours. At first, they discussed construction. Charles had designed bridges. Raymond had repaired electrical systems in municipal buildings. They understood structures. Load, stress, failure points, maintenance. Later, Raymond told me Charles had apologized for a life he did not know existed. I told him he did not owe me an apology, Raymond said. Victoria made the decision. There was no friendship between them. Not yet. But there was respect. Sometimes, respect is the first honest material people have available. Victoria saw Emma again 9 months after Thanksgiving. Before the meeting, she had completed months of therapy, corrected her accusations, surrendered all access to the genealogy account, and followed every boundary without attempting to negotiate through Nolan. We met at a public botanical garden. Nolan and I were both present. Victoria had stopped dyeing her hair. It had grown into a soft, silver blonde, lighter near the temples. When Emma saw her, she ran forward. "Grandma." Victoria lowered herself and opened her arms. Then she stopped. She looked at us, waiting, not assuming. Nolan nodded. Only then did she hug Emma. Most people would not have noticed the pause. I did. Consent had entered the relationship. Emma held Victoria's hand as we walked through the rose garden. Victoria did not comment on her eyes. She did not touch her hair without asking. She listened while Emma explained that bees were tiny workers wearing fuzzy jackets. Later, Victoria knelt beside her. "I am sorry I took something that belonged to you without asking." Emma frowned. "What?" "Your toothbrush. You can buy me another one." Victoria almost smiled. "I did, but I still should have asked." Emma accepted that explanation because she was 4. The rest of us understood what it represented. 1 year after the Thanksgiving dinner, Nolan and I hosted a small meal at our house. Not a replacement performance. Not proof that everything had been repaired. Just dinner. Raymond came early and helped Nolan with the turkey. Paige brought pie. My mother brought too much wine. Charles joined by video from Savannah for 20 minutes. Victoria arrived at the time we had agreed upon. She rang the front bell. She did not try the side door. Emma opened it with Nolan standing behind her. Victoria waited until he invited her inside. We used ordinary plates. There was no seating chart. No minister. No cream-colored envelope waiting on a sideboard. Emma sat between Nolan and Raymond. She talked about kindergarten, a missing purple crayon, and a girl named Sophie who believed the moon followed their school bus. At one point, Emma looked across the table. "Grandma, my eyes are like Daddy's." Victoria's expression tightened for 1 second. Then she nodded. "Yes. And Daddy's are like Charles's." The table became still. Not with suspicion. Not with fear. Only with the brief discomfort of people learning to live inside a true sentence. Victoria nodded again. "Yes, they are." Emma returned to her mashed potatoes. The world did not end. The truth destroyed a false version of the Ashford family. It did not destroy the people willing to build something more honest afterward. The cream-colored envelope remains in the locked drawer of my desk. Inside it are Victoria's preliminary report, the verified paternity result, the guardian form bearing my false signature, and the family match that identified Charles. I do not keep it because I am preparing for another fight. I keep it because it reminds me that silence and peace are not the same thing. Silence protected the person with the most power. Peace began only after the truth no longer required permission to exist. Victoria created the envelope because she believed evidence would remove me from her family. Instead, it proved that Emma was Nolan's daughter, exposed a history Victoria had refused to face, and forced every person at that table to decide whether family meant protecting appearances or protecting one another. Most importantly, it taught me that my value had never depended on Victoria accepting me. I did not need to win a place in a family by tolerating suspicion. I did not need to remain agreeable while someone violated my child. And I did not need to confuse calmness with silence. Calmness allowed me to preserve the evidence. Self-respect told me when to speak. That was my Thanksgiving story. A stolen toothbrush, a false signature, a hidden father, and one envelope that traveled around the table before exposing the person who placed it there. If this story reminded you that boundaries are not cruelty and quiet strength is not weakness, please like this video and subscribe to Calm Deception Stories. Then tell me in the comments, would you have stopped Victoria before Thanksgiving or allowed her to open the envelope in front of everyone?